The Prison Rape Elimination Act was created in 2003 to address sexual assault in the nation's lockups. New, more specific standards were created in 2012, and the state had until this year to comply. But as Jimmy Jenkins reports, Indiana is one of 7 states that will not attempt to meet the new federal guidelines.
Made that dream a reality.
Mike Pence was a member of the United States House of Representatives in 2003 when PREA was passed without opposition by both houses of Congress. However, now that he's in the governor's office, he says the law is too costly and burdensome. Pence, who declined to be interviewed for this story, sent a letter to Attorney General Eric Holder in May saying Indiana would not even attempt to comply with the new standards. In his letter, Pence wrote, "To attain full compliance, many additional staff would need to be hired, additional equipment installed, and resources put in place. This would require a redirection of millions of tax dollars currently supporting other critical needs for Indiana." Indiana is one of 7 states refusing the baseline of compliance, which means pledging to spend 5% of its federal funding on meeting the PREA standards. Brian Pearson is the state director for Indiana's PREA compliance. He oversees the state's 25 correctional facilities and says total compliance would cost the state millions of dollars they don't have. The biggest cost driver is manpower. The federal standards require a staffing ratio of 1 correction officer to 8 offenders during the day.
For us to have met that standard, we would have had to have spent in excess of $5 million added to our annual budget to add the staff to those facilities. So therefore, we were going to be not compliant with that standard in those facilities.
So the state will forfeit its federal funding, and Pearson has instead decided to create an internal auditing process.
To make sure that they're complying with our plan and also the standards as much as we possibly can without creating an excessive fiscal impact.
Pearson says in the past, facilities were more reactionary. However, new internal guidelines encourage staff to look for warning signs of abuse, and inmates are educated on how to report an assault. Leonard Goodman has been serving time at the Pendleton Correctional Facility for 8 years. Prior to that, he was incarcerated at the prison in Michigan City. He says the climate of sexual assault and reporting violent acts behind bars is changing gradually.
I never experienced any kind of sexual encounters or anything like that, but I've seen it. I've been down all these years, and I've heard things, seen things, and I would say it's better now.
Goodman says he thinks the climate in prisons is getting better in part due to increased awareness. Signs hang on the wall at Pendleton telling prisoners how to report abuse, and kiosks let them report it anonymously.
They have been posting signs and letting guys know and let them feel that they can always come to staff or what have you, and that haven't been in the past. You give those guys that kind of information, that gives them a little more hope.
Lieutenant Roberta Kramer oversees more than 220 inmates at Pendleton and says interaction with the population through PREA rounds is key to keeping them safe.
I will check for anything out of the norm, any kind of, like I said before, an offender that may look like something is wrong, he's shooken up, he wants to talk, he's not been out of his room, or something that I may see in a cell or a area of the unit that's maybe a corner or something that doesn't look quite right.
Cameras also monitor almost every square inch of the high-security facility. Across the street from the Pendleton Adult Complex is the juvenile facility. A report the Department of Justice issued in 2012 called it one of the most sexualized juvenile facilities in the United States. Rates of sexual abuse here are more than 3 times the national average. One of the reasons is that all of the state's juvenile sexual offenders are sentenced here. As far as PREA is concerned, juvenile facilities pose an even greater challenge for compliance. The new federal standards require prison staff of the same sex monitor juvenile offenders during showers and require a higher ratio of staff to offenders. Prison officials say they have responded by locating and closing off areas that were hard to keep an eye on. Juvenile cells also have more glass, so they're more easily monitored, but sexual offenders are often still housed together.
They're teenage boys, and they're going through adolescence, they're going through puberty, and they're having normal thoughts and feelings of a sexual nature, and yet they're in a confined space.
Which Commons says leads to sexual contact between students and sometimes even escalates to inappropriate relationships between students and staff. She says in addition to increasing staff training, the state is trying to keep young offenders at the local level where they can receive treatment and counseling.
So that those kids who do come to us are the more higher risk and the lower risk kids stay in the community and get services there.
The numbers at Pendleton have gone down from 300 students in 2006 to half that many now. And the ratio of staff to offenders is getting closer to compliance, but it's not there yet. State Representative Christina Hale thinks no expense should be spared to ensure the safety of the incarcerated. She says with a state surplus of more than $2 billion, Indiana could afford to comply with PREA.
I think that's just a basic expectation that children in our juvenile detention centers are safe from these kinds of crimes. And if it means spending $5 million to build a facility where our children can be safe, then I think that's a very wise and the ethically right decision to make.
Hale says as the legislature continues to reform the criminal code, the state should focus more on rehabilitation so that offenders can re-enter society successfully.
It's hard to talk about treating people well in prison because everybody gets angry at the bad guys, but we have to remember that the bad guys are coming back to live in our communities. We have to ensure that when people are transitioning back to working lives, when they're transitioning back to be our neighbors having served their time, that they're prepared to do that. And that means they're ready to work, but it also means that they're ready to live.
Reporter Jimmy Jenkins joins us now to follow up more on this story. You were there at the Pendleton Juvenile Facility, so you were really able to experience it. What's it like?
That's right. Well, it's a sad place, but because of the juveniles that are forced to be incarcerated there, they've gone through a lot of challenges, but it does seem to be getting better. None of the state's 4 juvenile facilities are currently in compliance with federal standards. The superintendents there have told the state it would cost approximately $5 million for them to come into compliance. One, however, is getting close as far as staff ratios go.
So PREA was passed in 2003, yet here we are, 2014 and nothing. Why?
That's right. Well, the law was originally passed in 2003. Standards were not developed until 2012, and State PREA Compliance Executive Director Brian Pearson told me that he didn't even have access to auditing tools until earlier this year. So when he had to make the decision, he decided that the governor could not sign for full compliance. So instead of spending the money to make the changes, the state will instead forfeit about $350,000 a year in federal grant money.
What's that like with other states?
Well, Indiana is like other states in that most states, the facilities are not fully in compliance with federal standards, but how Indiana is different is that we have not pledged to spend 5% of our federal prison money to achieve those standards. And so like we've seen with HIP 2.0, the Common Core, this is another area where Indiana is refusing to comply with federal standards.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jimmy.
You're welcome, Joe.